Tyler State Park Disc Golf Course first opened in 1994 and has changed greatly over the years to grow with the sport and to respond to the needs of the environment. Through the design work of Joe Mila, two-time World Masters champion, the support of the park staff, and the labor of countless volunteer hours, Tyler State Park has been a desired destination for many disc golfers around the world. For 3 years, the Bucks County Disc Golf Alliance toiled to restore the course after an infestation from the emerald ash borer required the removal of over 1,000 trees from the park and took 20 of the course's 36 holes offline. Now, we are pleased to invite everyone back to the Tyler State Park Disc Golf Course we all know and love. With 36 holes and with most offering a long and short tee pad and baskets rotating between 3 positions. We are excited to welcome back all disc golfers to experience a course that will test your skill, as well as your creativity, at all levels. All while dazzling you with its beautiful scenery, no matter what the season. And so, on behalf of the Pennsylvania Department of Conservation and Natural Resources and the Bucks County Disc Golf Alliance, welcome to Tyler State Park Disc Golf Course. In this video, we'll be looking at the long tees for holes 1 through 18, also known as the East Side. Hole 1, Giddy Up. Hole 1 is a perfect introduction to what the East Side of Tyler has in store. Players must first execute a straight technical shot to a landing zone of their choosing. The first landing zone is home to the A-pin, which is elevated in a recycled charcoal pit from the park. If players choose to lay up tee shots to this area, their angle control will be tested in order to turn the corner. As players enter the field, they must be wary of the high grass on the left, which is marked OB, and the thick rough on the right, which can act as a natural OB. Both of these features are also ready to punish overzealous tee shots. A guardian thicket sits in the middle of the fairway and splits the 2 remaining pin locations. The B pin is to the left and about 20 feet beyond the mouth formed by the corner of the OB area and the thicket. The green is very large with plenty of space behind the basket, but slopes away from the basket, so players will need to keep upshots close and control the angle of the disc to have a putt. To the right and guarded on both sides by thickets is the C pin, which sits on a less severely sloped but significantly smaller green. Adding to the difficulty is the OB path running about 20 feet behind the basket. A birdie on this opening hole feels great, but as long as you avoid bogey or worse, your round is off to a good start. Hole 2, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Straying from the normal script of Tyler, Hole 2 only has 1 basket position, but has 3 tee pads which greatly change the shot requirements for the hole. As the name suggests, the A position is the good, the B position is the bad, and the C position is the ugly. From the ugly tee, players are challenged by a series of gaps, forcing them to commit to a flight path with little room for error. The gap on the right is guarded by high branches above and bunkers on the ground, which call for precise disc angles and release points. The left side options are guarded by smaller trees, but with the road and a cross playing out of bounds, a tree kick could prove costly. The basket lies at the end of the middle section of trees, with a green that can play fast or slow depending on course conditions. One of the original holes of the course, the difficulty of Hole 2 has withstood the test of time despite its short distance. Conservative players can easily walk away with a par on this hole, but challenge the trees for a chance at birdie, and the risk of a stinging bogey 4 is definitely a possibility. Hole 3, Bunkerville. Welcome to the first signature hole of Tyler on the east side. After beating the initial gap, players will need to keep shots in the fairway or they will have to deal with thick rough on both sides, as well as a ditch that runs part of the way down the right and the OB path which skirts the entire left side of the hole. The A-pin sits about 15 feet behind the dry creek bed which runs across the fairway. It is a fairly open green, but the creek bed makes it a tricky shot to land close to the pin. Continuing forward, the fairway splits into 2 tiers and bends to the right. The left side is more open, but brings the threat of the OB road into play, while the right side risks early tree hits. The B pin is elevated on a raised island. Putts from in front of or behind this pin will risk sailing off the elevated green, so putt with confidence or lay up. Beyond the B pin, the fairway bottlenecks and continues bending to the right. When beating the bottleneck, players also need to decide from which side they want to attack this green. The left side is more open, but requires more power to throw around the trees and high enough to reach the pin. The right side gap is more direct, but with several small trees and a low ceiling, it demands solid height and angle control. Players will need to constantly assess their situation as they traverse hole 3, or the strokes can quickly add up. Hole 4, Soggy Bottom. With the OB road on the left and the downslope on the right ending in OB water, hole 4 can be one of the most stress-inducing holes at Tyler. Players who can beat the trees scattered in the fairway will find the first landing zone, which is home to the A-pin. With several trees guarding it, roots on the ground, and just enough exposure to the wind, the A-pin can be a very frustrating putt for players anticipating an easy birdie. Ambitious drives can attempt to turn the corner, but without accuracy, the bid could leave you chipping out, or worse, out of bounds. Exiting the turning chute, players will find the B-pin perched precariously on the hill. With roots on the ground ready to turn a disc on edge, and little to stop a rolling or sliding disc on the hill, a putt, or even an upshot, is one of the hardest gut checks this course can offer. To reach the C-pin, which sits in a small boxed green, players will need to pick a gap, avoid tree kicks, and also clear the downed log across the fairway. While it's an amazing birdie to pick up during your round, players will need to weigh risk and reward, or Soggy Bottom could throw cold water on a hot round. Hole 5, Cattle Chute. From an elevated tee, players must navigate a tight tunnel shot that culminates with 2 guardian trees. However, players mustn't be tricked by the open space, as this hole requires precise placement for an upshot. The A-pin sits just over the hill on the right and is guarded by small well-placed guardians all around, as well as rough on the right. About 50 feet further along the log is the B-pin, which is guarded similarly to the A-pin, but also brings the OB road more into play. From this landing zone, players will choose from multiple gaps to reach the guarded C-pin, with a large tree behind it which can double as a backboard or an obstacle for long upshots. Players can also blast a drive in a bid for an eagle on this short par 4, but could end up settling for par or worse with a tree kick or an errant shot into the rough. Hole 6, Stairway to Chains. Hole 6 is a tricky downhill shot which tests players' ability to judge distance and control ground play. After navigating the initial gap, the fairway bends to the left where we find the A-pin. Inspiring the name of the hole, the A-pin sits atop a staircase and creates a difficult choice. Landing short of the pin will give players a more level putt, but a miss can result in a long second putt. Going long of the pin will yield a safer putt, but players will be putting from below the basket. And an ace run will almost certainly land in the rough, if not the OB road behind. Moving on, shots will need to carry around the bunker on the corner, avoid the OB path on the right side, and miss the lone guardian in the middle of the fairway to reach the B-pin. While seemingly harmless, the hard ground and slope are just enough to send a disc on edge rolling. Finally, behind the wood chip berm is the C-pin, which is set toward the top of the slope and is guarded by a tree trunk and rough on nearly all sides. It's a scoreable par 4, but a bad tee shot or misplaced upshot can have players scrambling to save par. Hole 7, Serenity Now. Players will need to keep a cool head on this demanding par 3. With a sloped fairway that drops off on the left side into an OB creek, and the path and across to the right also playing out of bounds, Hole 7 demands the best straight shot a player can muster. The A-pin is guarded by 2 trees and by a deceptive slope. A disc landing near this pin can easily slide 20 or more feet past and down the slope, so touch is key. 60 feet and a few trees further lies the B-pin. Similar to the A-pin, it's well guarded by a few trees and a tricky green with a slope and roots ready to displace players' discs. Hole 7 saves the best for last with an elevated pin with a dramatic drop-off into Neshaminy Creek 20 feet behind it. A 2 on this hole is a birdie you'll brag about like it was an ace. Hole 8, Cliffhanger. Hole 8 provides players with some of the most beautiful views in Tyler State Park, but as is the case with many beautiful things in nature, this hole is dangerous. The Neshaminy Creek runs the length of the hole and plays as out of bounds. Players will also have to play back up the bank on their drop, making a wayward shot to the right potentially doubly painful. Bailing out left is also not a guaranteed safe play with all the trees. Finally, the routes along the fairway will deflect roller attempts, so players will have to attack this narrow corridor in the air. The A-pin sits precariously on the edge of a cliff. The only thing harder than sticking this green is gathering the nerve to run the putt. As the fairway drops and bends to the right, players can see the B-pin, which sits against the wall of the historic quarry, which makes for some interesting bank shot opportunities. But be mindful of the subtle slope, which is pitched just enough to send discs rolling if they land on edge. To attack the C-pin, players can either navigate the easier fairway on the left, which almost certainly requires 2 shots, or test their accuracy by attempting the direct path to the elevated C-pin. Players who focus on their landing zones and execute, instead of worrying about the hazards, should be able to scrape by on this tricky par 4. Hole 9, Insanity Later. From the tee, players will have to decide just how much distance they want to bite off. Laying up short of the creek bed can give players a better chance of staying in the fairway and footing for the second shot to attack. Cresting the hill on the drive can reward players with 2 easy pitch shots to set up for a birdie putt on this par 5, but be careful, because landing on the hill can result in rollaways and compromised footing. The A-pin sits on the hill, and as you can see, the slope and tree roots can cause a lot of problems for players no matter which side they are putting from. After cresting the hill, players will need to navigate bends in the fairway and some small trees to reach the next landing zone where the B-pin is located. This pin is guarded by a log across the fairway which stops short shots from sliding up, and a large guardian tree behind it to challenge players who end up past the basket on the upshot. Turning the corner, players will see what makes this a signature hole of the course. A beautiful downhill shot to a pin guarded by several trees, an OB creek, and finally, a stone wall. The backside of the green also rises slightly, just enough to confuse the mind while putting. Players have to stay in the fairway, or the strokes can quickly add up on this final hole of the front 9. Hole 10, Bazinga. Hole 10 is currently under redesign and only has its A-pin installed. From the tee, players can choose one of 3 fairways, each with its own challenges, to reach the green. The front of the A-pin is guarded by a retaining wall and a line of rocks ready to stop drive short. The pin is also elevated, adding risk for ace runs and errant putts. Seasoned players should expect a birdie on this hole, but aggressive play without proper execution can result in a gut-wrenching bogey. Hole 11, Sleepy Hollow. Off the tee, players can choose to throw flex shots or hyzers through the right or left gap, or attack up the middle. The deciding factor is how much distance the players want to gain while maintaining control in this difficult par 4. With thick rough on both sides, staying in the fairway is key. The A-pin sits in front of the downed log across the fairway. The log provides a nice backstop for upshots, but players who run the basket risk winding up behind the massive guardian tree, which can easily block the comeback putt. Players will need to navigate tight gaps to the left or right of the large tree to find the B-pin off to the right side of the fairway. This pin is guarded by a few trees and some tight rough on the right. To reach the C-pin, players can either challenge the line of trees guarding the left and middle of the fairway, or play around the right side. However, the right gap does bring into play some rough, as well as trees on the green. This is definitely a hole where players will need to weigh risk and reward and know when to mitigate damage when it occurs. Hole 12, Gully. Players can attack on the drive by taking the direct line left over the brush, but a tree kick can easily turn a birdie bid into a guaranteed bogey. The right side line is the original fairway from when this hole was once a par 4 and is considered the conservative play. The A-pin sits on a deceptive slope which will funnel disc left and long of the basket. The B-pin is about 80 feet behind the A-pin and rests in the gully, making for some interesting putts. Players must also be wary of the path, which plays OB and across. The C-pin is arguably the most guarded green at Tyler State Park, with a large bunker on the left and several small trees blocking the entrance. If a player's drive went far enough, they could also throw over the gully to reach this elevated pin sitting on the edge of the ditch. Although hole 12 has been changed to a par 3, an accurate drive and a confident putt can card you the birdie. Hole 13, more Cowbell. This signature hole of the course demands players plan and adapt to score. Players can take the inside right gap, which is the shortest flight path, but by doing so take on a greater risk of hitting a tree or landing in the rough and costing themselves precious distance. The left gap is much wider, but can add distance to the hole. In the cluster of trees in the middle of the fairway is the A-pin. The main obstacles on this green are the large guardians in front and behind of the pin, punishing players who land their upshots too short or too long. From here, the fairway opens up, but players still need to plan and execute their shots because the rough on both sides is treacherous, acting like a natural OB in many spots. Just before the large tree in the center of the fairway is the B-pin. The green itself is pretty straightforward, but landing an approach shot at a comfortable distance for putting is the real challenge. Turning the corner after battling up the fairway, players are greeted by the picturesque C-pin, elevated and perched between two trees which obstruct putts from several angles. If players can execute a plan and not be tempted into high-risk plays, they should walk off of hole 13 with a respectable score. Hole 14, the Three A Mandos. One of the most fear-inducing tee shots at Tyler, players must beat the mandatory right tree while still allowing discs to move to the left, or else they will wind up in the dense rough on the right side. Around the first bend is the A-pin, which sits between a large guardian tree and the short side rough. Down the right side chute is the B-pin, which players can only reach by successfully navigating many trees as well as the pitched fairway and green. Up the left side fairway, players must split a double mando and also beat the fence line guarding the C-pin. If players remain confident and execute two mando beating shots well, they will walk away from the Three A Mandos with a birdie 3. Hole 15, Harvester of Sorrow. As the name suggests, this is considered the most technically demanding and difficult hole on the course. Players must first navigate a wall of trees protecting the fairway, which, even if defeated, have a second line of trees 20 feet behind them to guard the hole. The first landing zone is home to the A-pin, which is protected by a final tree and a sloped green, ready to turn a parked shot into a 20-foot uphill tester. From here, players can either challenge several small gaps to attack the green, or lay up to the next landing zone, where you'll find the sleeve for the B-pin. While the B-pin is on level ground, the surrounding trees will be sure to hamper putts if the approach shot is not properly placed. The C-pin is well protected on its sides by trees and brush, so players will need to either choose the line up the middle, or be careful not to swing their approach shots too wide. Players must navigate all these obstacles while taking care not to end up in the OB Creek, which runs along the right side of the hole. With bogey or worse an absolute possibility, a par is nothing to be ashamed of on hole 15. Hole 16, Unforgiven. Players may think they are finally out of the woods, but mustn't be lured into a false sense of security. Hole 16 generally has swirling wind awaiting players as they exit the protection of the trees, and with thick rough on the left and the tall grass on the right marked as out of bounds, it can wreak havoc on players' shots. Ideal drives on this hole will clear the bottom of the hill, where the fairway opens up on the left. While bailing out left provides some safety for players, it does add distance to the hole. The A-pin is on the right side of the fairway, guarded by two trees. To reach this pin for a birdie putt, players will have to challenge the right side OB. Progressing up the fairway, the OB on the right ends, and players will need to begin aiming to the right after the guardian tree on the corner, but before the copse of trees on the left. Along this line, they will find the B-pin, guarded on its backside by several trees, which will test players' upshot game. Even a putt 10 feet past can be obstructed. After playing in the open, players return to the woods with a technical shot between two guardian trees to access this beautiful hidden green. The ground is protected by downed trees, so players will need to attack from the air to reach the C-pin, which sits behind the final large tree. This tight green offers challenges from all angles the further from the basket your upshot lands. If players can stay out of the rough, a par, or even a birdie is a definite possibility. Hole 17, Sweet. Like the last hole, hole 17 gives players a false sense of security with its wide open fairway. Players tee off directly against the OB line, which runs the length of the hole. To take the most direct line to all the pins, discs will need to challenge that OB. If players opt for the safe hyzer to the left, They add distance to the hole and also risk winding up in the rough, which serves as a natural OB on the left. Just past the tree in the fairway is the A-pin, which is relatively unobstructed, but after playing 16 holes, physical and mental fatigue may take its toll on putting. About 100 feet beyond the A-pin and just over the hill is the B-pin. The real challenge of the B-pin is placing an upshot close, as the base of the basket is hidden by the hill and will cause issues with depth perception. Players should also note the encroaching rough on the left and the OB on the right. Down in the copse of trees is the C-pin. Players can attack the right side, but must keep the disc high enough to clear the OB, but low enough to fly below the branches. Attacking the left side is less risky, but shots must either fade early before or sail long behind the cluster of trees guarding the left side, which almost completely block the basket. If all goes well, players can pick up a sweet birdie as the end of the round draws near. Hole 18, Defining Moment. The east side of Tyler culminates with a final test of players' technical skills. Players must balance distance potential with precision as they navigate this tight wooded fairway. There is a left side gap, but this brings the Mando into play. The A-pin is at the end of the wooded corridor. Players can take a chance at finishing their round with an ace by choosing a faster speed disc, but risk sailing well beyond the basket if they miss. Turning left, players will find the B-pin perched near the top of the hill. Guarded by trees and with an OB path behind it, even an amazing drive will leave players with a daunting putt for a birdie too. Continuing left up the hill, players must navigate trees and bunkers to reach the C-pin, set beautifully atop the stone wall. A technical yet manageable par 4, hole 18 is the perfect hole to cap off your round on the east side of Tyler. Thank you for watching this preview of Tyler State Park Disc Golf Course. For more information on the course and the Bucks County Disc Golf Alliance, please check out our website, www.bcdga.com, and find us on Facebook at Bucks County Disc Golf Alliance Discussions and Bucks County Disc Golf Alliance Events. For content like this and other disc golf content, feel free to subscribe to my channel.